The Speaker, let's just do a little bit on his departure. Those who didn't think he should go before he spoke on Monday must have thought he should after he had spoken. It was a disastrous performance.
I think, to be honest, most people had made up their mind before, and the real problem was that the Speaker hadn't tuned in to what the feeling amongst MPs was.
I mean, speaking from a Labour Party perspective, I don't think it was clear as that. At 6:30, when we had the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting, the line was we were rallying behind the Speaker.
Even after his performance?
No, on Monday.
On the Monday, because he made it on Tuesday.
6:30 on Monday, we were rallying behind the Speaker, because if the Speaker went, the idea was Gordon couldn't be far behind. Then by Wednesday, the Speaker had fallen through a trapdoor. Now, I'm a Speaker Martin supporter. He's a sheet metal worker. My dad was a sheet metal worker. But his performance on Tuesday, if you like Speaker Martin, was really painful. And I think it's at that point.
That was a turning point.
It was a turning point.
OK, let's look forward. What sort of Speaker should the Commons now be looking for?
Well, I don't know what most MPs will think, but I think the crucial thing is that the Speaker has to be seen as a very clear reformer who wants to not just clear out the stables from the point of view of the expenses, but also wider. I mean, the Commons has become little more than an electoral college for the government, and it needs to get off its knees and be a proper legislature again.
Could you just explain to our viewers what you mean by an electoral college?
Well, it's rather like what happens in the US, where they elect people who then choose who the president is, and then the president basically does whatever he wants. That's effectively what happens in the House of Commons, other than at times of great crisis. And what the House of Commons needs to be again, as it was before the First World War, because the rot really started actually in the First World War, when the government took control of Commons business, it needs to be a much more independent legislature where backbenchers, ordinary MPs can get involved in drafting legislation which isn't merely a vehicle for the government, but which is a stable piece of legislation.
All of that is true. I would say two other things. I think we're overdue now for a Speaker from the opposition parties. I personally don't think we can have a Labour Speaker again, which would rule out Frank Field, for whom I have a great deal of respect otherwise. But also, we could be, I think, it is possible, I hope we're going to win, but if we don't win, we could be looking at a hung parliament, or a parliament where Labour is the largest single party. So you want a Speaker who's a big personality, who has an absolutely, incisive grasp of procedure, because you could be looking at having to control a very turbulent House.
What kind of Speaker do you think we should be looking for?
Well, I agree with all of that, except what Diane said, that it shouldn't be a Labour person. The way the last Speaker was elected was in itself a sign of the corruption of the House, because he was elected in a thoroughly partisan way.
He was Gordon Brown Speaker.
He was Gordon Brown Speaker, and he was a boyo of the Labour Party, and he was elected by them. And it was when there was a Labour government that was clearly going to last for many years to come, and it was a complete travesty. But right now, the prospect is there may be a Conservative government, and right now is not the time for partisanship, even to say, look, it ought to be not this party but that party. What the House should do is elect the best possible man. I think that easily could be Frank Field.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of runners and riders from right across the House, and I'm not sure we know who they all are at this stage. I mean, my colleague Vince Cable has come under enormous pressure to stand, including a leader in the Times, for heaven's sake, already, which is tremendously flattering. I thank heavens for us in the Liberal Democrats. I don't think...
You think he will resist the pressure?
I think he will resist the temptation, because, as he says, he wants to stay being a player rather than being the referee.
The main runners, right? You've got Sir George Young, you've got Alan Beef, you've got Ming Campbell. No, but I'm just saying, but these are people who are really so connected with the old guard.
But the thing that I'm interested in, that a lot of these names that you've given would, in normal times, be absolutely the sort of person you would think of as Speaker. But these are not normal times, are they?
They haven't got a chance. And by the way, if Vince Cable is going around saying that he wouldn't be a player, I think he's entirely wrong. The next Speaker, if it were Vince Cable, would be a player. Well, I mean, all this reform we're talking about, this is where the game is now.
Just two other names, Anne Widdecombe, who has said that finally that she's interested, and also John Burker, who has actually a lot of support amongst Labour.
I would add one other, which hasn't been mentioned, but is Frank Field on the Labour benches. I mean, I think all three of those names are people who are not establishment parliamentary figures, who stand outside and therefore hopefully would be real reformers. I think the other thing that they have to have, in the light of, I'm afraid, the experience of Speaker Martin, is they've got to have a real sense of what the voters want and how the voters see us. Okay. Because they cannot simply be the champion of MPs. They have to be the champion of the people outside Parliament as well.
We've not had any